Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend, Jim Stam, probably very tired of watching bad baseball. How you doing, brother?
Yeah, I would like a little bit better baseball, but I think the approach I'm going to have with our guest today is I'm all hopped up on like steroids and painkillers right now. And so anytime Ethan gives me an answer I do not like, I'm just going to scream, it's 11-0. It's 11-0, and just get weird with the show because that's the kind of responses I think you know that Pirate fans are starting to become accustomed to.
Well, I'll keep that new knowledge in my back pocket for when we eventually succumb and have Jose Canseco on the show, that you have some background in steroids you can relate to him better than me. Make sure you write up some of those questions for the show. So, yeah, joining us again is our friend Ethan Smith. His schedule's finally changed so that he's able to make it for a Thursday. And he hosts the Locked On Pirates show. Most of you probably know that. Say hello, Ethan. How you doing?
Good. And the next time I see Jim sitting out there in left field, because I usually just adopt a seat next to him when I go to games. That's the response I'm expecting, Jim, is it's 11-0. And by 11-0, I mean you have the one up on me on mangoes 11-0, and I have to catch up.
Hey, Ethan gets a seat. Ethan takes Ben's seat at almost every game, but Ben doesn't care because Ben doesn't sit in his seat. So it works out perfectly.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Good times still to be had at the baseball games for me. There's still things I want to see. That's where we'll start today's show. Let's talk a little bit about what there is to see still, and are the Pirates giving us a chance to actually see it? I feel like the way that they're handling this pitching staff, I get it. I understand what they're doing. I understand why they're doing it. I understand the players they're trying to protect and the goal to get them to the end of the season and everything. But the way they're doing it is preventing them from really getting anywhere. It's been like this for a couple months now, where it feels like you'd have a couple games in a row where the guys were pitching, and then all of a sudden you're throwing a bullpen game or a Domingo Germán or Jake Woodford, or what are we doing? I mean, like, if we're trying to win, if the coach is really like playing under an ultimatum, like Dayon reports himself, that he's got to have a positive September to keep his job. He's not guessing. And you all know Dayon, when he says he's not guessing, it's sourced from somebody impeccable.
And when you say he, you're speaking of Shelton.
Yes. If he's coaching like that, how can you expect better results when you are asking him to do it with one arm tied behind his back, hopping on one leg? Look at the roster. Billy McKinney's here. Why? Alika Williams is here. Why? I mean, we have better shots at hitters down there, at least. Why aren't they up here? Jim, take a crack.
This to me was always going to be like the impossible scenario of this year, which was, how are you going to juggle the pitching down the stretch and still have enough to keep any kind of momentum going when you're throwing in, as you mentioned, the Woodfords and the Germáns of the world and bullpen games. Now, to me, what they do is then they compound it with some of the decisions they make offensively. So then you're dealing with the Billy McKinneys of the world, and sprinkle in a couple injuries here and there, and the insistence on playing certain guys when they really haven't earned, any more shot than anybody else. So to me, it was always going to be a really, really, dare I say, impossible thing to try to pull off down the stretch this year. It doesn't surprise. It surprises me that they've fallen off as badly as they did. I just thought there was always an end game to it this year when September rolled around.
Ryan Lytle puts Charrington set him up to fail. I'm fighting the urge to say it, so I figured I might as well post it since someone else was thinking it too. It kind of feels that way. I think we're going to lay out some evidence during this episode of why we think that might be the case. You know, why I'm at least leaning towards this decision's already been made. But Ethan, before we get into that, you're watching the starting rotation. It's pretty hard to get excited about the members of said rotation because it just feels like they haven't allowed them to settle into any kind of a rhythm.
Yeah,
for
and we
time now.
Yeah, and we talked about that even on my show about these guys are like the biggest creatures of habit in sports in starting pitchers. So when you start messing with that habit and messing with that schedule that they have of pitching every 5 days that we speak about, maybe that's why Paul Skenes is, albeit he's still very good, taking a slight dip in his production because he never really even feels like he knows when he's going to pitch. And last year we had that issue, but it was a different issue with only having Keller and Oviedo and a hodgepodge of everything else. But I do think it's interesting, Gary, when you talk about that, because these guys are creatures of habit. And when you hear the names 3 months ago, you're like, oh, that's a great rotation. But now you're not letting them live up to that potential because I feel like they're just messing with it too much. Like they're playing a game of operation with the starting pitching staff and they just keep taking out body parts every single time and hitting the buzzer, trying to figure out which one they can take out without hitting the buzzer.
Yeah, it definitely has felt odd to me, Jim. And if nothing else, if you're going to go with the 6-man rotation to perpetually have that 6-day stretch, why do we have to like constantly act like it's a last second decision to do so? Like, why do we have to act like we're physically moving guys back? We have enough pitchers that we shouldn't have to do that. Like, even if one of them would have been Domingo Germán, who was mercifully cut today, you know, like why do we feel the need to play a game and pretend there's any kind of gamesmanship to that whatsoever?
It's Gary, it's just kind of indicative of how they roll though. You know what I mean? Like whether it's announcing something, transactionally or waiting till, it's seemingly they're 2 hours before the game. You don't even know who's in the lineup or pitching or whatever. Yeah. I don't know how they're I know how they do it with fans and the public. I'm not sure how they're doing any of that in-house. And I do think that there is something to be said for, the routine and the regularity of things. And they're trying to like limp through the end of it with, well, we don't want to shut down anybody, but we still want to get them some innings. And it's just a bumpy road to get there. And this is what it ends up looking like.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. We're asking somebody to run a ship smoothly, and then we're taking the foundation of that ship and saying like, yeah, but you only get oars on the right side for this week. And by the way, you're not even allowed to row on Wednesday. Forget that. Wherever the wind takes you that day. I just think we're asking the captain of the ship to do things that aren't lining up with trying to win. And to me, that tells me they've already made the call, or they're really close to making the call, and it doesn't really matter. I don't know. Either way, we got to take a break. We'll come back and we'll argue about this a little more because there is so much to cover, so much material.
Lots to talk about.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. We're going to get to call your shot earlier than later today because it's going to fit right into what we want to talk about. But I got to start with Douglas Smith here. He says the goals are not clear based on their actions, and that's where I'm at too. I see a team that struggled mightily, that supposedly put an ultimatum on their head coach. And then in game 3 of a series in which they could have returned serve and swept a team that just embarrassed them in their own house, they throw out Domingo Guerremon in game 3 when they have good pitchers that could play. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's counterintuitive. It feels to me like they've already decided, Jim. This is just more evidence to me that Derek Shelton is coaching on his last leg.
Well, it certainly seems like the pressure is mounting, obviously. I don't think you get into that kind of discussion with the reporter without almost looking for someone to kind of, it's like when you're married or you got a girlfriend and you're already in a cranky mood and you're just waiting for somebody to say something that might be slightly dumb. And then you have an excuse to kind of, take out a little bit of that, your frustration on them.
Someone who already might fit the profile of a victim in a sports locker room.
Yeah. Yes. So I think that
who regularly ask questions that are borderline silly.
Yeah, I think it was one of those where it was like, I'm just waiting for somebody to ask something that I don't like or that I don't find all that intelligent, and that's what you got. That being said, look, this probably stems back to whenever they hired Derek Shelton, in just the sense that they like to call it like a collaborative thing between him and Sherrington, but really I think it's much more of a subservient role, and you are at the beck and call of kind of what the front office wants to do. And eventually, if you're never allowed to take control of your own situation and make truly your own decisions, I think this is how it ends up, unless you nail everything and it doesn't really matter, right? Because you're talented enough to where the calls that everyone is making is because you have really good players and a really good system and it's working. So I think this is,
Ethan, if they are truly preparing to throw Derek Shelton under the bus for everything, they aren't letting up even as we limp towards the end here. They made sure that they put out there that moving O'Neal Cruz to center was Derek Shelton's idea and something he wanted to do. They went so far as to have the GM come out and say the opposite just a few days before it. So they're doing everything in their power to finally make it look like Derek Shelton had some power. So, because otherwise you have to do what Dayon ultimately suggests, which is get rid of the GM too. So scapegoats only work if you make it look like they had some opportunities to make some decisions, right? I mean, is that what we're seeing here?
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting way of thinking about it, because I hear a lot of people talk about this, Gary and Jim, about, oh, let's go get so-and-so to be our manager and everything will be okay when that happens. But who's to say that if the general manager stays around and a good portion of that front office stays around, that they don't do the same thing to the next guy too and start telling him, hey, you can only do certain things right now that we're okay with, and if you don't, then you run into this situation again. And it's little nuggets that you have to pick up on for everybody watching. It's nothing that they're not trying to hide it. It's just things that are not in plain sight. I think what I would say is you kind of have to use your peripheral to find them. But I did find it interesting that it's almost every decision that has been made this year always has Derek Shelton's name attached to it. Every single one.
And it's the first time it's really been like that too. They've made sure that he's been the final call on lineup decisions and the final call on pulling Jared Jones after 5 innings in New York. They made sure that was Derek Shelton's call. That wasn't analytical, right? They went out of their way to do it all season long, and This is right along the lines of this subject. Let's do Call Your Shot right now. All right, Call Your Shot is brought to you by our friends at Shop Yins. Visit shopyins.com. Check out all of their cool Yinsery stuff, including some of our stuff. You can get our logo on some hats and hoodies. We're coming up on winter. I know firsthand the hoodie is comfortable as his L. So go ahead and get it. And yes, I'm officially old. Talking like Snoop Dogg back in the day. Brandon Richards, our old friend. He's been on the show before. The Pirates are 10-21 since August 1st. Ouch. Do you think the team has quit on Shelton and this coaching staff? Or was it a tough schedule that did the season in? Or did the tough schedule prove to them that trying wasn't worth it? I mean, is that what happened? I don't know. Ethan, I'll let you take a crack at this first. Have players quit on Derek Shelton?
I don't want to go full they quit on Derek Shelton, but it did feel interesting that they just fell off of the proverbial cliff when that schedule came up. So I think it could be a mixture of both. Like, I think as Pirates fans, we sometimes forget how good some other teams are. Like the Padres and the Arizona Diamondbacks are teams that I could realistically see winning the World Series. And Arizona was just there last year. So I think it is a mixture of maybe a little bit of both. Like they were just getting frustrated with some of the decision making, i.e. David Bednar being the closer for as long as he was. So maybe just a mixture of both, but I wouldn't lean all the way in one direction on that.
I don't know the answer to this, Jim, but I just want to point something out. If this coach is on the hot seat, as I'm sure we all think he is, the players feel that too, and they're in the room and they know that he's on the hot seat, right? So what do you do as a player if you want to make sure that your coach that you think is in trouble stays out of trouble or has a chance? Don't you hustle?
Well,
don't you run out the gate? Don't you start trying to look like you're really invested in a game that you shouldn't be invested in? Like down 11-0, aren't you diving for balls and giving the coach credit for it after the game? Like, yeah, well, coach would never have us let up, right? Dude, I don't see any of that. I don't see any of that, even from the players that typically provide it.
Yeah, I think once you get to this point in the season and they had that, to me, it comes down to way more about that stretch where they lost so many one-run games. To me, that's as debilitating as anything right there. Is like if something takes it out of you, it's that. A lot of one-run losses, a lot of blown leads at the end from the bullpen. And I just think that it's such a gut punch that I don't think it's losing the locker room. I just think it's awfully tough for some teams to get up off the mat when those types of things happen. And they just had such a stretch of it. So I think it's way more that. I think that players do feel somewhat responsible, like Gary, what you were saying, which is, if you like a coach, you feel like you're letting him down. But at the end of the day, sometimes they're just not as talented as everybody else either.
I don't think I don't think what I'm seeing is about talent. Okay. I don't. I'm sorry. If you really care about your coach, and one of the things that he preaches to you is that you should be hustling out of the gate. And his job's in trouble. I'm sorry, you're doing it. And it's not like just a once a game thing where it happens either, or once a week type thing. I'm talking like a lot. There is a lot of no hustle. There is a lot of sloppy. There is a lot
sloppy for sure.
There is a lot of bad technique. There is a lot of repetitive mistake making. There's a lot of things that a team that wants their coach to survive starts to do. They start taking more pitches instead of like just going up there and hacking over and over again against a guy who's just wiping you out. You know, you have to change something, right? That's it. Either the coach is not coaching them to do these things, or they're actively not doing those things. And to me, I just remember back in the day, if you knew a coach was on his way out, you could almost expect to see the players hustle more, do more, care more. You know, I don't see any of it. I don't see a white knight in that room for him.
No, I agree with that. I will say I think you get a real mixed message here in Pittsburgh, which is everything you're saying, Gary, is correct, is accurate. But just go back to the game where they got no hit. They're pulling guys out of the game. You know, like, where is the pride in that when you are trying to stay in a game? Reynolds left the game. They brought in Alika Williams. They brought in McKinney. Then Cruz, you know, at the end of the game, whatever, he doesn't run out of ball. Then you've got players that look at it and think, well, wait a minute. Are we really doing everything we can here to win from front office? So you get this real weird, and like, remember, a lot of these guys aren't Andrew McCutcheon and they've been around the block a long time.
Yeah.
So you get this real weird, like, you know, mix of like, hey, we care. We're trying. It's time to compete. And then it's like,
don't you give up on us, Pittsburgh.
Right. But then you get a game where, hey, we're going to throw Jake Woodford, and then we're going to throw Domingo Herman. And
exactly.
I mean, players aren't stupid.
No, but that's the thing. You go into a series like, okay, yeah, that series where they started Keller and Jones and Skenes and they lost, they got boat raced. That's going to happen. I get it. You threw your three best. We all thought it sucked, but we all, not a single person said, oh, they threw bad pitchers at them. If one of them had been like Jake Woodford or Germán or whatever, okay, there have been people saying that. They didn't try to win this series, right? Well, that's how it felt to me. Like, I'm starting to call Derek Shelton 2 out of 3 ain't too bad Shelton. Because how many times have they taken 2 of 3 of a series, and then that third game, they could care less if they even compete in it, let alone try to win it. I don't know how you coach a team lacking competitiveness like that. How could you put a lineup out like that? Like, that's no shot. How do you never adjust and realize that you've got Rowdy Tellez, one of your hottest hitters, and you continue to bench him against lefties, which he's always hit until he got here, because you won't let him. Like, what are you doing? It was even your plan at the beginning of the season. That's what you were going to do.
They are the king. They are the kings of getting up 2-0 in a series and be perfectly willing to mess down their leg in game 3 and not compete in it. Or they'll do it in a game or a series where it's 1-1, and then all of a sudden you're kind of conceding a game. To me, you do that 5, 10, 15 times in a season. Well, that's the difference. You know, like, we're not taught. Baseball is not teams ripping off 15-2 seasons in the NFL and just dominating. It's really not. It's the long game, and it's winning 6 of every 10. 6 of every 10. And if you can do that, you are good.
Truman here jumps to a very familiar trope. Do you think Leland would put up with it? No. But Ethan, Leland never would have built it. This team is a reflection of the culture this coach has built. And this GM.
Yeah.
You know,
definitely.
What they provide on that roster isn't good enough to win every game. You have to go max effort with your best players every single game and do the best you can. I understand why they don't win 3 out of 3 all the time. But it's a lack of competitiveness that I think has the players showing up to the ballpark on day 3 of a series expecting to lose because it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, and even on top of that, Gary, you were talking about the importance of that Chicago Cubs series and unwriting what happened last week. And you mentioned being serious about winning. Well, if you would have won that game yesterday and put out what you should have put out to win that game yesterday, the Pirates would have won the season series against the Cubs yesterday if they would have won that game. That is something you instill in those guys right when they walk in the door. Hey, we could still come back and even finish better than Chicago if we play well enough down the stretch because we've already beat them more times. So why are you
Right.
and you even go back to right before that losing streak started, and where I think all of this started was that game in Houston. They had a chance to sweep Houston. They got out to an early start. And then, like you guys have been saying the whole time, it just kind of felt like they didn't want to win that game. Like it just felt like the decisions that were happening were like, whatever. And it's the old adage of you're saying a manager is managing for tomorrow instead of managing for the 9 innings that are in front of them right now. And I think we've seen that quite a bit. And Jim, I agree 100%. I think that's the difference. I mean, that could be the difference in them still going after a winning season right now if you take those games seriously. And it's happened a lot this year.
I mean, it shows up in these one-run games too, Jim, that you brought up earlier. It's the same kind of thing. Where's that killer instinct to scratch and claw and hold guys off, and preserve a tight game? Where's that scratch and claw to come back late and take one of those games? It's all a reflection of a coach that, we'll get them tomorrow, boys.
Well, isn't that indicative somewhat too, though, of baseball anymore? Is like everyone's so focused on like the long game, and you're pitching. Hey, we're not going to throw a guy 7 innings, no hit ball. Got to take care of him, right? We got next year to worry about. You're in this year. Baseball gives teams, GMs, coaches so much longer to kind of screw around, if you will, about sometimes winning right now doesn't always matter as much as it does in other sports. I think that's super frustrating. And then when you get to the Pirates, it seems to be doubly so because they even have a longer stretch of time to build something. So you get into this real world mindset where like, not only are our teams doing this, GMs, coaches, players, it's almost like normal and accepted. And I think that like us as Pirate fans, it's doubly painful to watch that. So it's indicative of the sport to me too, guys. Like I do think so.
We got to take another break. When we come back, I want to pick up talking about how they finished the season so strong down the stretch last year with a pathetic rotation. And then you look at the rotation that they have right now, and they're set up to be way, way worse than that down the stretch, right? That again does not make a lot of sense. So let's start asking, why are we holding on to some of these players, even the ones we've already waived?
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. I wanted to make a quick note and a congratulations to our friend Ramon Foster. 500 episodes of the Ramon Foster Show on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Super, super fortunate to be on the same network as Ramon Foster. Great dude. If you ever get the chance to meet him, you will feel the same way. I'm that confident. So like DK would say, I'm not guessing. He's a great dude. So make sure you do check that show out. It was good. He was getting his flowers and taking them. He doesn't usually do that. So listen to that. Now, speaking of flowers, I think people really kind of want them to be at his retirement party for Derek Shelton, as opposed to like watching him continue to coach this out. But last year he did a good job closing it out with what should have really been a quitter's roster. They had no rotation to speak of. Bullpen performed very, very well. They had some young players coming up and doing some impactful things, like Nick Gonzalez and Henry Davis. Believe it or not, he was doing some things. And
I barely
Piguero
remember.
even played. I think they did some good things last year. I don't see that same kind of fire this year. I really don't. I'm starting to wonder if it's because they've just got enough vets playing the string out that it just doesn't make any sense, right? Like, why is Taylor still on the team? He's been waived already. O'Neal Cruz is the starter. Let's be blunt. You're pitching guys like Domingo Germán and Jake Woodford, and you have Rowdy Tellez closing 3 out of the last 10 games for you. I don't think I give a crap about having a defensive first center fielder out there. I think we'll live. Like, what are we doing? Like, get these kids up here. You have to put Cook and York on the 40-man. There's no question about it. You just traded real live assets for them, so do it. What else are they going to learn? They got to hit 400 down there for you? They got to play more than 4 or 5 different positions each? Get them the hell up here. Give Derek Shelton some tools. What do we do? What's Alika Williams doing up here? Ethan, are you as pissed as I am watching some of these nameless, faceless, gray shapes just move through the dugout anymore?
Well, and if perfect timing, by the way, SteelCityPirates.com, where I write with Gary, I actually kind of wrote about this in a pretty lengthy piece about some of these guys they're going to have to make decisions on, like, a Liover Piguero, who's about to be on his 4th year on the 40-man roster at 23 years old. You don't see that all that often. Maybe you might want to get him up here and at least get somewhat of a sample size of what you're seeing. And if you're going to have to put Billy Cook and Nick York on the 40-man, which you will anyways, why not get real live MLB action with these guys? Because I'm a component of this. AAA and the minor leagues, they do help develop players.
Billy Cook's almost 26.
Yes, he is. And the thing that's funny about that, though, there's such a difference. And I always hear, well, he's not ready for MLB yet. How do you know that if he's not here? The only way you can figure that out is if they face MLB talent. That is the only way you're going to figure it out. We figured that out a little bit about G1 Bay and Alika Williams and some of these guys that we talk about. They can't hit it. It's just how it is. That's where they are. But you can't figure it out unless you have them here. Like it's like kind of having like a bottle of whiskey downstairs just to say you have a bottle of whiskey downstairs and not ever opening it. Like, what's the point of having it in the bottle if it's never going to be used? Like,
if the 40-man roster was like, again, if I thought there was a chance that Cook and York weren't going to be on the 40-man, I wouldn't advise this. I get it. Fine. Whatever. Now, that's what you want to do. You want to play out the string with Michael Taylor and everything. Cool. But I'm sorry, again, you traded actual real assets for them. So they're going to get put on the 40-man. You've already decided that's a worthy risk. Okay? And you went and acquired 2 guys that are supposedly blocked from major leagues on 2 other teams. I mean, that's plain and simple, right, Jim? I'm not understanding what's going on here. Why am I watching Billy McKinney start in left field tonight? Like, why am I watching Alika Williams start at shortstop? Get me Liover Piguero up here. I know that he failed. I know he hasn't had a great season, but you're going to have to make a decision on him, a big decision on him in a month or 2.
Yeah.
Get him up here.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, Piguero to me is somebody that, like Ethan mentioned, about 4 years on the 40-man, right? So, like, see it through. If you're so careful about everything to the point of, boredom, and then when this stretch comes around where now it's clear you aren't playing for anything right now concerning this season, this would be the time that you would see it through. Why would you go through all of that and not do it? And we've had this conversation before with other
Exactly.
players. So this is not new. This is just the next name on the chalkboard that we're circling and doing the same thing with. And now we'll be into another year of this. And what?
I'm
in
nowhere
20-some games.
near done asking questions. Andrew McCutcheon hurts his knee, goes on the IL, jumps up and down in the dugout doing interviews, telling everybody that he feels great and he's ready to play. Comes off the IL, plays one game, boom, hurt again. Knees hurt, sitting on the bench again. Listen, I got mad respect for Kutch. Go on the IL, my friend. Let us get somebody up here that can give Matt Gorski a shot. Why are we wasting these guys? We take them to like the bitter end of possible team control, and we never. I can't believe Mason Martin never got that bad up here. It just makes no damn sense at all. It just doesn't. I'm sorry, it doesn't.
I know Gary's mad when he's bringing up Mason Martin.
Yeah,
It's not like I think he was going to be a star.
Right.
But start showing guys there's something to worth work.
Yeah.
Look at the flay they get out of like a Drew Maggi or like this Feigl dude that comes up here, and now he probably gets to retire with like a 1870 ERA. Good for you. I mean, I'm glad he got up here and got a game. Good. He gets a game check too. Congratulations. Feel good story. Give me that for a player that I've actually thought might matter for a couple of years.
At one point, at least.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't get that.
The last time I can even remember was 22 when Peguero came up here because he was just closer to the team and they needed him, absolutely needed him for 2 games and then sent him back down. That's the last time I could think about that.
Absolutely needed him so bad that he sat there all but like one game.
Yeah.
I will say the thing that does concern me as we talk about all this with got the question of have the players quit, or what are the expectations, whatever, or the mistakes or the sloppiness. There are too many young guys on this team to really even have to be that we shouldn't be having to ask that question. These are not dudes that are just completely set in stone major leaguers. You know what I mean? Like, so you would expect, even just from that aspect, you would be seeing guys tightening it up, playing as hard as they possibly can. If for no other reason, then it's your career. It's your spot on a roster. And you, I don't even know that you necessarily get that. I'm not questioning everybody on that team. I'm just saying this is not some old team that had expectations. It blew up, and now everyone's just cashing a check and waiting for, making their off-season plans. It should not look like that.
It should, but they're not also playing a lot of those young guys. Like that, okay, we have like Rowdy Tellez. I don't expect Rowdy Tellez to run out a ground ball in the 8th inning of an 11-0 blowout. Okay. I expect O'Neal Cruz to, when it could be a base hit because of where he hit it, and he's that fast. I think that's where like laziness and capability kind of cross over and make this weird vortex. I ask more of O'Neal Cruz because O'Neal Cruz can do more. That's all. I just want to see that hustle all the time. To me, it's easier to do it all the time than to think you're going to be selectively hustling out there. Like when you deem it necessary, you're going to miss some. That's why I want a guy like that hustling all the time. Nick Gonzalez hustles all the time.
Right.
All the time. Every once in a while, that's going to save them from a double play, or it's going to get him a base hit that he didn't deserve because somebody fumbled a ball or had to readjust their grip, and he was already closer. That's what I want to see. I want to see that from all the guys. Triolo does that. He hustles, and he's doing better recently, so I'm not going to pretend that like everything's forgiven from the whole season, but there's another guy where patience is kind of an opportunity. Maybe have created something here, right? He's hitting a little bit, playing good defense. He hustles when he's on the base paths. He takes his walks. You want to see that from everybody, though.
And you don't want to see the dumb mistakes either. I know we mentioned about Rowdy. Yeah, he doesn't need to be, I don't need him blowing out both hamstrings and herniating a disc trying to run out a ball. But I don't need him getting picked off first base either when he has no business being, 15 feet off the bag in a game where you're Rowdy Tellez. You don't be an idiot. So like, it's just even those things too from veterans where you're seeing them even make dumb mistakes. I don't know, man. I do think that it's a hard ask, and I don't know how this works in a professional setting. But if you've ever worked somewhere where a manager that you don't really feel has a lot of power, and you're asking, and he's asking you to do things, but the boss is a joke too. Like, are you really going to get the kind of effort, attention to detail, and buttoning up of things that you would hope to expect? And I kind of see that with the Pirates, which is Shelton only has so much teeth in anything, and then on top of it, they seem dysfunctional. I think that seeps through sometimes to the clubhouse. I think players are human.
Yeah, I mean, there's even more reason to call up some of these guys because, like, Isaiah kind of left for, he came back from like his injury. He was acquired when he was on the IL, comes off the IL, hasn't faced MLB pitching in like a month and a half. He's struggling to get his legs under him. I don't question his effort at all. He's been great defensively. I'm still pretty happy he's going to be here next year. I think he'll be better. But he's never been a hitter really until this year in Toronto. So it's not like I've really expected him to be like some crusher. All of a sudden he's the leadoff hitter. Well, I mean, I don't understand what Derek Shelton sees when he makes these decisions. I really don't. The prototypical leadoff hitter, it doesn't exist on this roster. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it does. But this guy is struggling right now. He doesn't belong up there. And I don't care how veteran he is. Unless he's going to bunt once in a while and try to run him out, I don't want to see that. You'd be better off with Triolo. Be flexible right now. That kid's at least drawing walks and stinging the ball. Put him up there. He takes a good at bat. Nick Gonzalez was a decent attempt, but he'll strike out up there. I'm to the point where, like, I think I've seen the training wheels kicked off now, and I realized that I never taught this fool how to balance himself. I think that's what we're actually seeing right now. I'm just waiting for him to crash into the hill and see how skinned up his knee is, whether I have to get stitches or go to the ER.
Well, we're probably more in the ER state if we're talking about Shelton, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We're probably more in the ER stage in my opinion. I don't know that there's anything now that Derek Shelton can add or do or say that we haven't already seen in the years that he's been here. Like, even when he gets kind of mad, it's almost like people kind of snicker at it a little bit. Like, it doesn't even seem like all that legitimate, right? Like, it's mad for the sake of getting mad, but that's not really kind of who he is. So it's kind of funny almost.
Like, yeah, totally get like Robin Williams doing a serious role.
Yeah. Like, you just like, okay, he's doing his best and trying at it, but it smacks of inauthenticity. And I just think that we're kind of there. We've read the whole book on Derek Shelton. I know what he is. And
right.
Yeah, so that's just how I'm seeing it at this point.
It feels that way to me too, Ethan. I mean, I think we're, for the most part, unless Noah asks a question, starting to get to the point where we can predict what he's going to say in interviews too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's the Derek Shelton that he wants to project. He's a company man, and I think he's probably starting to feel like the company might not have my back so much right now. So
Oh yeah.
I'm just going to go ahead and kick some people on my way out this door.
Yeah.
And he will get hired again somewhere. And I don't think as a head coach, but he will get hired somewhere because he's a very popular man around the sport. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up on the Phillies staff next year. But I think it's got to be over. The hitting coach has been stubbornly held on to this whole time. Pitching coach, I think we've liked, but there's obvious problems too with how the bullpen has gone and how inconsistent some of these starters have performed. And how can nobody convince Mitch Keller to quit throwing a cutter out of all these smart-ass baseball people?
It popped up in my head the other day. I was like, Oscar Marin, the situation. I'm like, you know what? As the season's gone on, it hasn't looked as great as it did at one point. And I did check. I mean, they've given up. Them and the Cardinals are tied in the NL Central for runs allowed. I mean, like this is not a pitching staff by name that you thought was pretty good. The actual results really aren't there as the season has gone on. So, and it's been largely buoyed by a couple names, right? So even that overall to me has kind of regressed a little bit. And we're not talking about, yes, they've had some injuries, but they were way more decimated last year in that department than they ever were this year. So, you know, you're talking again about regression, and you don't want to be seeing it really anywhere at this point, let alone what was supposed to be your strength.
Like Derek Shelton last year basically walked up to the first tee at the golf course, pulled out his grandpa's good old wood that was literally made out of wood, swung that puppy and knocked it 275 right down the pipe. This year he showed up with a composite graphite, beautiful driver. It's got like logos from Tiger Woods all over it and crap. He walks up and shanks it 3 fairways over to the right. That's what he has less tools last year and performed better. I actually was more encouraged about him last year than I am now. The team aside, I can see through the performance into the actual pieces. I still feel like that there's some pieces there that I like. I still feel like it's going in a general positive direction. But there's no doubt that they have to change something here. I just don't think the team is playing or learning under this coach anymore. I don't even think they're open to listening to it. Just I don't see that body language. I'm not saying anybody hates him or anything. I'm sure they'll all love to have a nice scotch with him one day, you know, when they run into him on the road. But I just think that they kind of know that he's inferior at this job. Right? Some of them have played for real coaches before.
Oh, we've talked about this before, which is sometimes you got to kind of hire someone to babysit and let him get trampled the whole time. And then you're going to have to actually go out and hire a professional nanny and make sure things that are needing to get done are getting done. And we're probably at that point where like to me, I'd like to see a kind of guy that will come in, push back a little bit against the front office if necessary, and be a guy that, you know what, if you don't do something, you're probably going to get sat on the bench for the game. You're probably going to get pulled. I don't think there's any fear of that right now with the Shelton clubhouse.
Not at all.
None whatsoever.
I think at this point, Ethan, the players are kind of in on the gag. We talk about them like not being put in a good situation or playing that Sunday lineup 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes it feels like, but the players are in on that. They only have a couple that really want to play every day. Brian Reynolds is one of them, and they're purposefully making him DH sometimes twice a week. I mean, like, I'm not really sure who beyond him. Rowdy doesn't seem to want to come out. I mean, that I'll give him that. He wants to play. He hasn't been right for a month now. Nick Gonzalez looked like he always wants to play. Henry Davis probably looks like he wants to play 5 games all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Henry takes it to an extreme.
I just feel like we're watching guys that are more than okay having their off day, no matter what. That game's super important. Yeah, that's cool, coach. I'll sit. Like, I get it. That never would have happened back in the day, man. Like, we always talk about, Leland wouldn't have. Well, Leland wouldn't have been able to. If Leland had gone to Jay Bell and said, Jay, you're getting a little tired. I'm going to need you to sit. Here I'm gonna start John Cangelosi or whatever. Jay Bell would have looked at the standings and said, "No, you won't." Like, there's a different era of these players too, man. Like, they have taken this rest me thing 100% to heart, and they love it.
Yeah. Well, and you were mentioning earlier, Gary, too, about not taking him seriously anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that a lot of people, I think, sometimes forget that, there's a lot of games, but this is also a lot of time. These guys have been around this guy now, like, for the most part, this group has been around him since the beginning of March of this year. That's a long time. So if this is what's being instilled, is that he's going to tell you that you're going to do this, you could see it early in the season. Maybe they push back, right? But now they're going to say, what's the point in pushing back for it when it's just going to happen maybe anyway? And I feel like that might be something the players get frustrated with, is if they go and ask, they might get rejected and say, no, you're sitting no matter what. Because then that puts you in a whole nother situation where it's like, if you want to bench O'Neal Cruz and he wants to play and you don't play him, that's just going to make the guy mad. That's what's going to happen. You could bench
O'Neal Cruz and he probably wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah,
between that and rest. So then your message doesn't even get through, does it?
Yeah, and I have people joke with me all the time. I working at the bar and stuff. They're like, he's almost like a little league manager. It's like everybody has to play. Like, I swear, if it was up to him, every single offensive player, like they did in the Little League World Series, would be in that lineup every single day. He'd have a 16-person lineup every single day where he could play everybody. And it just lacks consistency. I think the 2 words that go with all of this for Derek Shelton, guys, are results and consistency. And we just haven't seen either of those really in the entire time he's been here.
Right, except for maybe little short spurts. And I think, like, look, I want to make it clear that, like, I don't necessarily buy into you don't want to have a tyrant come in. And I don't think that really works today in any setting. But there needs to be a healthy fear that if you are not pulling your end of the bargain and holding up the end of the bargain and doing the things that are expected of you, that you might get called out for that. That has to be there on some level. And I just think with a Shelton type of guy, I don't think there's that healthy fear in the back of your mind that, like, you know what? I do need to perform and take care of my personal responsibility to this team, or I might get called out for it. I don't necessarily think that that's ever in play with someone like Derek Shelton.
Last thing I wanted to talk about was Paul Skenes a little bit. I saw some people getting nervous that he's not that great anymore. The dude didn't have it the other day in Chicago and somehow threw up a 0. The command was off really bad. I think Paul's getting tired. I think that's just reality. getting tired. He's pushing himself further than he ever has. I am not concerned at all about Paul Skenes at all. I think he'll come back next year and be 100% great. The rookie of the year thing, I don't think that he's a favorite anymore because Jackson Merrill has done some really incredible things, actually. But I don't think it's fair that he's dropped down as quickly as he has, Jim. I mean, it feels like the Vegas odds have really, really changed drastically. And I don't think Paul Skenes has done anything to make them change that drastically. I think it's more old biases about pitchers shouldn't win this are kind of just creeping up. What do you think?
I think it's tough for pitchers anymore in the cycle of news and how things stay in it. You know, you're talking a guy pitching once every 5 or 6 days, and he's really got to continue to be dominant, because if he doesn't have a dominant start, well, then the next thing you know, you're almost 2 weeks later. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then he's going to pitch between good starts. And I think part of this race between these two would have changed had and this isn't fair, had the Pirates just remained relevant in the postseason race too, because then you're matching that with what Jackson Merrill is doing, which is he's actually helping them win games that are big games. Paul Skenes is winning a game, but it's not that big of a game for the Pirates. So I just think that, like, it's a combination of things between trying to stay relevant in this everyday, what have you done type situation, and the Pirates completely fell off the earth. And
Doug, this doesn't make any sense. Why are they doing this? They're doing it because if you don't stretch them out this year, then next year you still have to stretch them out. That's why they're trying to stretch them out.
Yep.
And I think too with Paul Skenes, the thing about it is, Doug, is like he will learn how to pace himself better through a season because of this. Because I think what you saw at the beginning of the year when Paul Skenes came up is a guy who didn't know what the end might look like. Now he's good enough and talented enough to still get past it, as we just saw the other day. But this was a guy trying to sprint out the gates in a marathon. And then you eventually have a little bit at the end where you just don't have enough left in the tank.
We saw Jared Jones do the same thing. Came out like,
right.
How many pitches did he fire over 100 miles an hour, like right away? And
right.
This is
so they'll learn. They're going to learn.
First year he's really even hit that figure. He had no idea what that's going to do to his arm. So you have to go through that. People hate saying process, like it's going to change. You could hire anybody you want. There's going to be a process. So, I mean, like, if process has become a bad word for you, stop watching sports. They all have them. They all do it. They all talk about it. So I don't even understand why we get mad about words that just go around as descriptors for baseball. That's going to happen.
They become
process.
They become swear words to Pirate fans because those terms have been used, and then you start blanket assessing what that means here. So
they can fire whoever they want. Derek Shelton's the most likely one to me, and I think everybody under him will go with him. I don't think it'll rise above that, and I don't hold as much faith that Travis Williams is as lockstep in charge of that situation as others do. And here's my evidence for why that's not the case. Because if Travis Williams truly had any say in what was going on in the baseball field, he would for damn sure know every date that Paul Skenes was going to pitch right now, so that he could be actively going out there trying to sell those tickets, instead of letting the Pirates pretend that they're just, last second bumping him by a day. Travis Williams would not be putting up with that. They would be selling, if he had any kind of real sway over this actual baseball ops side of things. I think we're all holding our breath for Bob Nutting to have an oh shit moment. And I think he will.
Oh, I don't consider Travis Williams to be even remotely involved in the baseball ops. He doesn't even enter. He doesn't even
According
enter
to
my.
Dejan Kovacevic's reporting, he is 100% in charge of that.
Well, that's frightening.
So, I'm just telling you, if he has as much sway as they say on paper, because that's why he's able to say that unequivocally, because on paper that's their structure. If they're actually operating properly, then he should be able to say, I want to know when that kid's pitching.
And he already did earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
He already
Right.
did. It was no joke that we all knew that he was going to debut in May, a week and a half before it happened, because Travis
Right.
Williams wanted that to get out there so that place could be what it was and sold out. That it's not out of this world to think that.
No, it's not. I just think it speaks to the ultimate lack of communication, how these wheels are not turning in the same direction. I don't even know if they're pulling for each other. I really don't. Like, I don't know if they even like what each other are trying to do.
Well, we do know that when situations start getting bad, just in life in general, with any type of team, or everybody kind of starts looking out for themselves just a little bit more, right? So we'll see how this plays out, because I would assume that you would start to see even more cracks. And there's a month left in the season, and then we're going to hear some things and see some things, and it'll tell its own story, I think.
So please, somebody, please, after the game, preferably the guy who has already pushed buttons, I really want you to ask something super smart, like, why did he strike out there in the fourth inning? That's all I want. I mean, I just want to see the fireworks. I won't even quote your name and laugh. I won't. But baseball is a hard sport. I think Derek Shelton is, for the first time in his solo coaching career, learning it firsthand. And it's a cruel business in which friendships die and then ultimately come back together later on, So, you always just float around baseball and meet people that you've worked with in the past and have to get over grudges. But I have a feeling this is not going to end the way that it was promised to somebody.
Probably not. I think are we all in agreement? Probably best to turn the page, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Even though
I'm not showering it off.
Oh, that should be on a shirt, actually.
Absolutely, man. Hey, we should end the show there, though. You're right. Ethan, thank you so much for joining us, man. How do people get a hold of you aside from listening to your daily show that they make you do? And if you were uncomfortable, would you like to read an ad real quick?
I already knew that was coming at some point today. But you guys can find me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. It's also on Instagram now, so go follow it. I just haven't posted on that much, but probably will more in the offseason. And Gary will be on the 800th edition of Locked On Pirates on Monday. So
whoa,
find that. Yeah.
That'll be
not
fun.
Not all me. It's not, I didn't do all 800, but I would say a good chunk of them were me.
I bet I've been on a good 80 of them. Feels like probably.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Congrats.
Pretty fun stuff.
Congrats,
Good
Ethan.
stuff.
Ethan does really good. And I'll tell you, when we're at the ballpark, we always have some great talks. It's like another little podcast edition. So congrats on the 800, by the way.
There are times when people will ask me, how can you guys think of something to talk about every week? And then I say, Ethan thinks of something to talk about every day.
Right.
I wouldn't want to do it. I end up writing it, but at least that I can think about it before I'm spewing it out.
Yeah, you got some time, right?
Yeah. So, hey, good stuff. And I think Shelton's on his way out. That's kind of the conclusion. And I think everybody involved is showing us signs on a nightly basis. So I guess the next question that we'll probably have to tackle next week is, why wait? What do you think? Sound good?
Why
Jim?
wait? why wait? And I'm going to come with a couple names. I might even try to think outside the box on maybe a hire or something that I would go to maybe try to make up for some of this lack of integrity in that clubhouse that's needed.
Well, whatever you do, don't read my piece about that then on Steel City Pirates, so that you can steal my name.
I will not.
Oh man.
For sure. Ben, take it away, brother.
Let's go, Bucks!
Yeah, buddy. See you, everyone.